Let's test out to see if you're a night owl or an early bird. If you like to wake up early in the morning and have more energy during the first part of the day, you're certainly an early bird. On the flip side, if you come alive when the moon is high and the stars are out, you might be a night owl. It also means you're the type of person who can stay up into the wee hours, savoring the silence and tranquility that the nighttime offers. For you, staying up late is a breeze, while hitting the snooze button in the morning becomes a tempting routine. But hey, there's a little more to it than just early to rise or late to sleep. The early birds, though they start off the day in high spirits, tend to wind down as the day progresses. Come afternoon or evening, they may find it a struggle to keep their eyes open. In contrast, the night owls might stumble out of bed in the morning feeling a bit meh. It can take them anywhere from half an hour to an hour to shake off the sleepiness and kickstart their engines. But once they're past this initial slump, they gradually start to ramp up their energy levels. Problem is, these so-called morning people seem to be running the world. You remember the old saying, right? The one about the early bird catching the worm, or that going to bed and getting up early puts you on the fast track to becoming healthy, wealthy, and wise. We've heard them all, and there's this general assumption that being an early riser puts you in the winning lane of life. You don't have to do a lot of research to see that modern society is more comfortable for early risers. You just have to look around you. Most shops start their schedules at 9 a.m., for instance. School is also conveniently placed in the first part of the day. But guess what? Modern science is calling this out. We humans are all unique, and that reflects in our sleep-wake cycles too, also known as chronotypes. And, according to some research done in recent years, we're actually talking about 6 different chronotypes. The study primarily targeted college students. They presented these individuals with 6 charts to understand their energy levels throughout the day, morning, afternoon, and evening. The participants then had to slot themselves into one of these categories. Surprisingly, only a mere 13% are genuine morning enthusiasts. Almost double that number, 24%, are the people who burn the midnight oil. But the most interesting part is that the majority of people belong to entirely different sleep-wake cycles. For instance, there's a small yet spirited 9% who are just bursting with energy all day long. On the other end of the spectrum, about 16% of people are sleepy throughout their day. In scientific terms, these individuals are affectionately called moderately active. Then there are the 18% morning-charged people who need a bit of a snooze in the afternoon. Even if we add up the morning people, the all-day energetic folks, and the ones who need an afternoon siesta, we've got at most 40% who function better in the morning. If we extrapolate this to the whole population, it seems like a minority of early birds are dictating our daily routines. I mean, think about it. Not everyone is a morning person, but most jobs kick off at 9 a.m., or even earlier in some cases. Sure, there are some caveats to this study. For one, college students aren't exactly representative of the entire population. Also, they are notorious for pulling all-nighters, either hitting the books or partying and then sleeping late into the morning. So, the study might be overstating the number of night owls and understating the early risers. And, let's not forget, the students were asked to assess themselves, and we all know how precise that can get. Even with these limitations, this research paints a pretty clear picture. It tackles the myth that we are divided into only 2 groups, the morning people and the night owls. In fact, a substantial chunk, if not the majority, are not morning people at all. With the growing trend of remote working, it's a blessing for those of us who function better in the afternoons and evenings. Finally, we can sync our work schedules with our natural sleep-wake rhythms. But let's say the initial classification is correct, that there are only 2 types of people, those that like to wake up early and those that would rather not. It's obvious that tending to wake up later during the day might come with its own set of challenges. You might find it hard to concentrate during those first working hours. You might even underperform while in class if you're still in school. It raises the question, could night owls become early birds? Well, here's what science has to say. It's possible, but certainly not a piece of cake. Now, before we delve into how to make the switch, let's get familiar with this fancy term named chronotype. Turns out that the chronotype saga isn't a straightforward tale, though. It's an intricate blend of nature and nurture, says science. On the nature front, many genes are at play, helping determine whether you're a nighttime binge watcher or a sunrise chaser. A bunch of studies have even highlighted hundreds of genes linked to morning people. These genes have a say in our circadian rhythm, which is just a fancy name for our natural sleep-wake cycle, leading to our chronotype. That being said, your environment also plays a starring role. It's like this. You engage in daily activities that sort of match your chronotype. Let's say you're a night owl. You're all bright at night, so that's when you choose to get your sweat on or hang out with pals. This, in turn, feeds your late-night tendencies. The environment's influence gives us hope, though. This means you can play around with your sleep-wake cycle to suit your lifestyle. Want to become an early bird? Go slow and steady. Specialists advise gradually setting your alarm 15 to 20 minutes earlier every few days over a period of weeks until you've hit your ideal wake-up time. Remember, consistency is your friend here. You might start adjusting as your work week progresses, but if you revert to your late-night ways and morning snoozes on weekends, you'll hit a roadblock. That momentum you've been building all week will soon be gone. Light exposure also plays a crucial role. Before bed, switch off those screens to avoid blocking the production of melatonin, a hormone that sets your sleep-wake rhythm. When you wake up, let the light in, signaling your body to wrap up melatonin production. Late-night activity can mess up your transition too. Swapping your night workout sessions for morning or afternoon ones could work wonders. You might even need to reconfigure your meal timings. But hey, if being a night owl suits you and doesn't interfere with your commitments, feel free to keep that schedule. You know how some people get super inspired by those top CEOs and try to replicate their crack of dawn routine, right? Well, it might not be as awesome as you think. If you're trying to be an early bird but you're cutting back on your beauty sleep, that's a big no-no. You're basically inviting a whole entourage of unpleasant stuff, like feeling grumpy, struggling to focus, potentially gaining weight, feeling jittery, and upping the risk of having heart problems. And here's another nugget of wisdom. If you're hitting the ground running super early, you have to wrap up your work earlier too. Otherwise, what's the point, right? Most sleep specialists have a bone to pick with big shots who start their day really early, but then also burn the midnight oil, either in their offices or glued to their email inboxes. It sets a harmful trend. So, if you're a night owl trying to switch to an earlier morning routine, maybe it isn't all that good if it means compromising on healthy, restful sleep. You should be okay with making the necessary changes if you keep it balanced, though.
Care to hear an incredible story about a man who doesn't sleep? Meet the hero of our tale, Thai Nguc Thai Niop, an 80-year-old farmer from Vietnam. If what he says is true, he hasn't snoozed a bit in over 60 years. It all started when he had a terrible bout of fever as a young man, and since then, he claims he hasn't had a single night of rest. Most of us can't even imagine going through a whole day without a few hours of shut-eye. But this man insists that his lack of sleep hasn't affected his life in any negative way. In fact, he leads a happy and active lifestyle, much like anyone else his age. His family, friends, and even his neighbors vouch for him, stating that they have never witnessed him dozing off. The man firmly believes that his complete sleeplessness hasn't had any detrimental impact on his health. This unusual farmer was born in 1942, and at the age of 20, was struck by a severe fever. Although he managed to overcome the episode, he never regained his ability to sleep. Despite trying different medications and traditional remedies, sleep continued to elude him. He held on to the hope that his insomnia would eventually pass. But little did he know that he would go on without sleep for a remarkable 6 decades. His story became something of a legend in his home country of Vietnam, often regarded as a miraculous feat or an extraordinary superpower. However, some doctors offer an alternative perspective. One specialist suggested that the farmer may actually be experiencing short bouts of sleep without realizing it. At times, such individuals struggle to differentiate between being awake and being asleep. So it's possible that this man might be catching some snoozy time during quick power naps throughout the day. Perhaps these brief moments of rest are sufficient to keep him going. It's important to note that he has never consented to undergo thorough testing or observation by sleep scientists. which means his claims and the accounts of those close to him are the only evidence available. Nonetheless, he isn't the only person who claims they haven't slept for several decades. One Asian woman, for instance, claimed to have been sleepless for a staggering 40 years, too. She has become something of a local celebrity due to her unusual ability to stay awake night after night. Just like the Vietnamese farmer, she claims to have been able to sleep properly at one point, but hasn't done so since childhood. At first, her neighbors were skeptical, assuming she was simply exaggerating or seeking attention. To test her claims, they attempted to stay up with her, engaging in late-night games and other activities. Some of them dozed off at the table, while others eventually gave up and returned to their homes. Even her own husband attests to the fact that he has never witnessed his wife sleeping. Instead of catching some well-deserved rest, she busies herself with household chores during the night hours. Concerned for her well-being, her husband went as far as getting her medicine, convinced that the woman had a severe condition. Unfortunately, the remedy proved to be ineffective, leaving the couple perplexed and seeking medical help. When she finally sought assistance from local doctors, they provided little to no relief, since they were unable to offer a medical explanation for this extraordinary condition. In a fortunate turn of events, the woman's search for answers led her to a specialist sleep center. It was there that the puzzle of her sleepless nights began to unravel. As she engaged in a conversation with her husband under the watchful eyes of doctors, they made a remarkable observation. Her eyes began to slow down, and she actually fell asleep while maintaining her dialogue with her husband. Further examination using a brainwave monitor revealed an astonishing fact. The woman's eyes remained closed for no longer than 10 minutes each day. This peculiar phenomenon bears resemblance to how sleepwalkers operate, where the body remains active while the brain slumbers. Essentially, her body continues to function even while she technically sleeps for those fleeting 10 minutes. This intriguing discovery sheds light on why such people genuinely feel as if they haven't experienced a good night's sleep in ages. Most of us don't have these unique abilities, though, and find it hard to get through the day if we haven't gotten a good night's sleep. Why? Because sleep allows our body to recharge, heal, and perform important functions. Ideally, adults should aim for around 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night. Let's take a closer look at what happens to our bodies during longer periods of time without sleep. It's not uncommon to go without sleep for 24 hours, and while it won't cause major problems, you can expect to feel tired and a bit off. After a whole day of being awake, you may feel drowsy, irritable, and have difficulty concentrating. You may start to crave some food too, and your eyes will definitely show that you're tired. Once you've been awake for 36 hours, the signs become more intense. You'll have an overwhelming urge to sleep, and you may even have short periods of sleep, known as microsleeps, without realizing it. These microsleeps usually last up to 30 seconds. During this stage, different parts of your brain will struggle to communicate with each other. You may find it difficult to remember certain things and to learn new information. After 48 hours, it might become even harder to stay awake, and you're more likely to experience episodes of microsleep. So, how long does it take to recover from such instances? Well, the good news is that you can bounce back by prioritizing sleep and allowing your body to rest. To start the process, it's recommended to establish a consistent sleep schedule. Try going to bed earlier rather than sleeping in late, and aim for a minimum of 7 hours of sleep each night. This will help your body get back into a suitable sleep routine. Take into account that it might take time to get back to normal, ranging from days to weeks, depending on the duration of your sleepless episode. As a general rule, for every hour of sleep loss, it may take approximately 4 days to fully recover. There are some additional steps you can take to bounce back as soon as possible. For instance, if you've only missed a few hours of sleep, taking a nap can certainly help. However, it's important to keep your nap short, around 30 minutes or less. Make a nice routine for yourself whenever you're planning to snooze. This might mean creating a comfortable sleep environment, avoiding stimulating activities before bed, and limiting exposure to light. Scientists are always discovering cool things about how our brains work. But do you ever wonder what happens to our incredible brain when we sleep? First of all, we know that every living creature, from tiny fruit flies to jellyfish, sleeps. This activity is also special because it has some costs. When animals sleep, they can be vulnerable to other, more powerful creatures. The brain is especially affected by not getting enough sleep. There are two types of sleep that our brains go through. One is called rapid eye movement, REM sleep, and the other is non-REM sleep. They each have different brain waves and activities happening in our brains. Non-REM sleep happens when we start falling asleep. Our brain waves slow down, our muscles relax, and our breathing becomes slower. REM sleep is interesting because our brain waves during this time look very similar to when we are awake. This is when we have the most bizarre dreams. The thalamus, an important part of our brain, sends images, sounds, and other sensations that create our dreams during REM sleep. There's a chemical called acetylcholine that is pretty strong during REM sleep. It's also active when we are awake, and it helps our brain remember things. That's why studying before bedtime and sleeping on it can help us remember things better the next day. When we fall asleep, our brain has these special patterns of brain waves called spine spindles. They are still not fully understood, but scientists think they play a role in learning and remembering new things. They might also help us stay asleep, even if there are noises or other distractions around us. Once every couple of months, you have bouts of hiccuping that last 10 to 20 minutes, and you think that it's horrible? Oh, my sweet summer child. Imagine hiccuping for 68 years straight. How would you like this? A man named Charles Osborne had quite a funny way of talking that he developed to hide the sound of his endless hiccups. Poor guy had been hiccuping non-stop starting from June 13th, 1922, for over 68 years. So here's the story. Osborne was born back in 1893, and he started hiccuping after a small accident on a farm in Nebraska. He fell over, but he didn't feel anything weird until he started hiccuping like crazy. Doctors think that the accident might have damaged a small part of his brain that helped stop the hiccup reflex. There are a few different theories about what might have caused his hiccups. Some people think that he might have hurt his ribs during the fall, and that messed with his diaphragm muscle. Others think that he hit his head and had a stroke. Either way, he was stuck with the hiccups for all his remaining life. Can you imagine having 20 to 40 involuntary diaphragm spasms per minute for that long? By the time Osborne finally stopped hiccuping, he had probably done it about 430 million times in total during all his 97-year-long life. It was so bad that he saw a number of doctors, sometimes traveling quite far, but nobody could fix it. One doctor even tried to help him by putting him on a mix of carbon monoxide and oxygen, and it helped for a bit, but that ended up being a bad idea, since breathing in the poison gas wasn't a safe solution. Instead, Osborne had to learn a special breathing technique to minimize the hic sound that came with each spasm. He'd breathe in between hiccups and flex his chest a few times per minute to suppress the noise. It was still obvious that he was hiccuping since he'd heave and jerk, but at least it wasn't as loud. Osborne had been hiccuping for 56 years when he became famous by giving an interview in 1978. He said that he'd do anything to get rid of the hiccups, and that he didn't even know what it would be like to not have them. He was constantly sore from all the jerking and spasming. After speaking up, he got a lot of attention in the media. He was even listed in the Guinness World Records and appeared on TV shows like The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, and that's incredible. People from all over the country sent him letters with suggestions for how to cure the hiccups, but none of them worked for more than a little while. But this ordeal didn't stop Charles Osborne from living a relatively normal life. People knew him as a happy-go-lucky guy who loved cracking jokes and didn't talk much about his condition. He married twice and had 8 children. He sold farm machinery and auctioned off livestock for living. In 1990, for reasons that are still a mystery, Osborne's hiccups suddenly stopped after over 6 decades. Unfortunately, he passed away just a year later. I bet, however, that his last months were really happy because they were finally hiccup-free. Despite all the medical advancements made since Osborne's time, there is still no surefire way to cure prolonged hiccuping. Hiccups are a strange phenomenon that have been around since the dawn of mammalian existence. We still don't fully understand why they happen or what purpose they serve. Researchers are slowly uncovering the answers to 2 key questions. Why do hiccups occur in the first place? And how can we stop them? Hiccups are a reflex action, similar to the way your leg jerks when a doctor taps your knee with a hammer. This reflex is found in many mammals, from household pets like dogs and cats to larger animals like horses and rabbits. When you hiccup, a nerve signal travels from your diaphragm, which is the muscle located at the bottom of your lungs, to your brain and back again. This process is repeated multiple times, causing your diaphragm to contract and your lungs to expand. However, in the middle of the inhale, a reflex causes your epiglottis, which is a flap of tissue that sits at the top of your throat, to suddenly snap shut, creating the characteristic hic sound. This is how the sudden closure of vocal cords sounds. This cycle continues until the reflex is interrupted by something like holding your breath or drinking water. Hiccuping is caused by the phrenic nerve, which is a long and oddly shaped cord that goes from the chest to the diaphragm. It first appeared in mammals' ancestors that were fish-like, but theirs was shorter and connected straight to the gills next to the brain instead of going all the way to the diaphragm. The reflex of hiccups might have been useful for amphibians that lived on land, as they needed to switch between breathing underwater with gills and breathing in the air with lungs. The epiglottis flap closed and thus sent water into their mouth and gills, keeping it from going to lungs. However, since humans no longer live underwater and do not have gills, why do hiccups still exist in us? They may have other benefits. For example, babies tend to hiccup more often than adults, especially while suckling milk. As they drink, they also swallow air, and the hiccups might be the body's way of clearing the air from the stomach. This reflex might work like a self-initiated burp. Interestingly, it's not just young infants who hiccup a lot. Even fetuses as young as 10 weeks old have been observed hiccuping. This process might serve to train fetuses' brains to map out their internal body. In other words, they need to learn where their diaphragm is located and how to control their breathing, and hiccups might help them practice breathing so they're ready when they're born. Approximately 4,000 people seek medical attention for hiccups each year in the United States. How to get rid of hiccups is one of the most commonly searched health questions on Google. Most hiccups resolve by themselves within 2 days, but longer-lasting bouts could indicate an underlying problem such as a brain tumor. Sometimes patients face continuous hiccups that don't go away even after medical treatment, known as intractable hiccups. In such cases, only treatment of the underlying condition helps. To address hiccups, doctors have tried different medications that aim to relax muscles and nerves that may cause diaphragm spasms, but there isn't enough clear evidence to recommend a specific treatment. There's a Japanese research group that has discovered a new method of curing hiccups, and it involves breathing in high-concentration CO2. It tricks the brain into thinking there's a life-threatening emergency, causing it to forget about the hiccups. However, if you can't travel to Japan for this treatment, you can try some old wives' tales that have been proven to work, like drinking a whole glass of water in one gulp, standing on your head, or getting really scared. These methods work by interrupting the reflex arc, so the nerves and muscles are distracted by something else. This is a conclusion made by Ali Sifi, a neurointensivist who became obsessed with finding a cure after seeing a patient wake up with unexplainable hiccups after brain surgery. Drinking water quickly, for instance, forces the diaphragm to keep creating suction, which keeps the phrenic nerve occupied. It interrupts one part of the reflex. Similarly, getting scared, for example, activates the vagus nerve, which has a calming effect, thereby interrupting the other part of the reflex. Ali Saif has created a tool called the Hickaway, which is more consistent than the traditional methods because it helps to combine both effects. It looks like a straw that requires the drinker to suck very hard, like drinking a thick milkshake, engaging both nerves and effectively ending the hiccups. A human being can survive up to a couple of months without food, a few days without water, and 69 days trapped underground. At least, that's what 33 miners in Chile managed to do. The 5th of August, 2010, started like a regular workday deep underground. The miners were going about their business, digging for copper, gold, and other minerals. Some of them were working almost 2,500 feet below the surface. Another group was resting in the refuge, a room carved out of the rock for miners to relax in and breathe some fresh air pumped in from the surface. They were waiting for a pickup truck to give them a ride up for lunch. Around 2 p.m., they felt some massive vibrations. A massive bang followed. Everything around started shaking. Dust filled the air, and the passageway collapsed, trapping the men inside. When the noise faded, the miners decided to make a run up to the surface from the refuge. Their shift manager and others joined forces, determined to rescue every single man. Deep below, 2 miners were loading rocks into a truck when they felt a burst of pressure. They thought it was nothing extraordinary until the dust became so thick that they couldn't see a thing. Driving blindly, they almost collided with their shift supervisor, who signaled them to stop. With the truck now packed with terrified men, they set on a treacherous journey toward the surface. The truck struggled under the weight of its passengers, but it pressed on. They met up with more workers, cramming onto the truck like sardines. Obstacle by obstacle, they moved to the surface until they bumped into a huge rock, weighing around 700,000 tons and as tall as a 45-story building. They sent the smallest of the miners to see if there was any hope of squeezing through next to the rock. He only managed to crawl 10 feet forward with a lamp in his hand and told everyone else there was no chance to get any further. Some of the older miners got trapped at work before, but it would usually be some rocks that a bulldozer could clear in a couple of hours. This time, it was different. The miners didn't plan to give up, so they split, and one group searched for shafts that let air, water, and electricity flow into the mine. Those are supposed to have ladders to serve as an escape room. They managed to find one chimney with a ladder. One of the miners climbed up, breathing in dust and holding onto slippery walls. The chimney led him to the same rocky wall they'd seen before. It meant only one thing. There really was no way out. They had to deliver the sad news to the rest of the miners who went back to the refuge. It had enough snacks to feed 33 people for several days. Someone grabbed the snacks, still not realizing they could be stuck down there for days or weeks. Cans of peaches, peas, and tuna, 6 gallons of condensed milk, and 93 packages of cookies were all they had. The one thing they wouldn't have to worry about was water. There was more than enough of it in nearby tanks, which were keeping the engines cool. All the connections to the outside world, the electricity, the intercom system, the flow of water, and compressed air have been cut. Men working above the ground on that fateful day also heard the blasts and saw the dust cloud in front of the main entrance. While the miners were settling in for the first night in the refuge, the local emergency squad was trying to do everything in their power to save everyone. One team went down in a pickup truck until they bumped into the gray rock mass at around 1,500 feet. Another team tried descending on ropes and pulleys into the chimneys, but they found obstructions at each level. The supervisor of the team took off his distinctive white helmet to show all the workers were equal now. As the miners remembered later, it was one inspiring gesture for them. On the 7th of August, there was another collapse that blocked the ventilation shafts. On the next day, the rescuers started drilling holes and sent down listening probes to see if there were any signs of life down there, with no results. The maps of the mine were outdated, which made the search more complicated. Deep below the surface, the miners tried to keep their spirits up, talking, joking, and telling stories. Their phones didn't have a signal, but they could still use them as cameras to record videos about their survival underground. Their metabolisms were slowing down, and even the most active among them were sleeping longer than usual and having scary nightmares. There was a haze drifting over their thoughts. They spent 17 days without any contact with the outside world, eating only once every other day. Some of the miners started having health problems. On the 22nd of August, one of around 30 probes sent into the mine detected tapping. It came back with a note saying, "All 33 of us are all right in the shelter." Soon, rescuers managed to deliver food, water, letters, first aid, and other necessary supplies through the narrow borehole. They also sent down high-tech video cameras that beamed back live footage of the men in their steamy, sauna-like surroundings. The miners invented a system of jobs and routines to survive in those conditions and remain sane. Above ground, an international team of engineering and mining geniuses put their heads together to crack the code of how to bring those brave souls back up to the surface. They came up with a plan to drill an escape tunnel and lower a capsule inside the mine, large enough to fit one person at a time. Then a crane would pull the capsule back to the surface. They brought 3 separate drilling rigs to the site and began work on the 30th of August, 25 days after the accident. The trapped workers were helping their rescue from below. They formed 3 teams and worked 8-hour shifts, demolishing debris caused by the drilling to reinforce the mine's walls. The original plan was to set them free by December, but Plan B drill finished working on a tunnel by the 9th of October. It took 2 more days to line up the tunnel with metal tubing. Finally, a rescue worker went down into the mine inside the capsule. The families and friends of the miners were waiting above the ground in a makeshift Camp Hope. The first worker got out of the mine after a 15-minute journey through 2,050 feet of rock inside the capsule. He was greeted as a hero. One by one, they all escaped from the refuge. Millions of people around the globe followed the rescue on live TV. It took less than a day instead of the planned 48 hours. All 33 of the miners, aged 19 to 63, had been rescued and were mostly in good health. They all had to wear dark glasses to help their eyes to the sun after being in a space with so little light for so long. One of the last miners to have climbed back up on the surface was Franklin Lobos, a former professional soccer player. While he was down there, teams around the world signed jerseys for him. Franklin got that welcome gift and a soccer ball. He said it had been the toughest match of his entire life. The incredible 33 were showered with love and praise. They were guaranteed 6 months of top-notch health care. They traveled to international destinations to talk as motivational speakers, appear in public, and explore famous landmarks. There was even a parade at Florida's Walt Disney World in the miners' honor. A movie named 33, based on their story, came out in 2015, featuring Antonio Banderas. He played the role of the miner who filmed daily video logs to assure the public that they were all right. This story, which many find to be a real miracle, went down in history and in the Guinness Book of World Records as the longest time survived trapped underground. We have to thank scientists for constantly looking for ways to make our lives better. On that note, there was an amazing experiment that took place in Singapore recently, where a team of scientists created this neat thing called the cold tube. You know, when you're sweltering on a hot summer's day, the first thing you reach for is probably the air conditioning remote, right? I mean, that's the standard way we cool down. But what if I told you there's an even better and more energy-efficient way to chill out? Our bodies are like mini radiators, constantly exchanging heat with the world around us. This heat doesn't just hang in the air. It goes from hot stuff to cooler stuff. So, the cold tube, which was essentially an outdoor pavilion filled with panels cooled by cold water, used this natural process to cool down folks who walk through it. This creative little project showed that we could feel comfy in a tropical climate, not by cooling down tons of air, but by using radiant cooling, which is much more energy efficient. Scientists believe this could totally revolutionize the way we cool down and move air around. Such a cool tube could not only save us a ton of cash on our energy bills, but also keep us safe in times of crisis by enabling more airflow without needing a ton of energy or infrastructure. The biggest misunderstanding about air conditioning is that it's not the only way to cool down. In fact, our standard window units are energy monsters compared to, say, a ceiling fan, and they don't even bring in any fresh air. Some compare leaving the AC on to having lights on in 100 rooms in terms of energy usage. The benefit of this innovative tube is that it separates the cooling from the airflow, so you can keep your windows open for fresh air without having to use tons of energy to chill and dry the air. But what about outdoor air quality and urban heat islands? It's been pointed out that AC units just dump heat outside, which can make city areas unbearably hot. In contrast, their tech could be used to create cool areas in the city where people can hang out and enjoy. Are we on the brink of a world without AC? It's probably going to take some time and a lot more experimentation to completely change the way we think about our comfort systems. It's not just about flicking a switch, but the cold tube experiment was a huge academic success, and it's definitely added to our knowledge of how thermal radiation influences comfort and efficiency. There are some companies out there already exploring similar tech, But they are still at the stage where they need to show people how this can work in the real world and further develop these concepts. This isn't just about upgrading technology, it's a total shift in how we think about comfort design. It's particularly important in places like Singapore and other tropical regions where a lot of energy is used to dry out the air, even more so than cooling it. In those areas, new ways of thinking about comfort can make the most difference. Sure, what's to come sounds exciting, but air conditioning was itself quite an amazing invention. It allowed us to go about our day-to-day routine even when the thermometer was bubbling over. In fact, 3 out of 4 US households have air conditioning. But here's a fun fact. The grandfather of all air conditioners wasn't even designed with human comfort in mind. Rewind to the start of the 20th century. A Brooklyn-based publishing company was having a tough time with humidity messing up their top-tier color printing. 2 consecutive summers of unbearable heat were wreaking havoc on their business, swelling pages and smudging prints. They found hope in the fledgling cooling industry. Enter Willis Carrier, an adventurous engineer in his mid-20s. Carrier came up with a basic cooling system to battle the humidity around the printer. His idea? Use a hefty industrial fan to blow air over steam coils filled with cold water. The excess humidity would then take a chill pill on the coils and voila, you get cooled air. The system worked. It not only fixed the printing issue, but also made people feel more comfortable. That's when the proverbial light bulb lit up. But Carrier, the ambitious fellow he was, knew his invention was a baby step towards controlling humidity. So he kept tweaking and improving his technology. Fast forward to 1922, when Carrier invented the safer, smaller, and mightier centrifugal refrigeration compressor, essentially the blueprint for today's ACs. The Smithsonian's National Museum of American History even showcases one of the first practical centrifugal refrigeration compressors as a tribute to Carrier's creativity. But let's not get carried away and forget the other inventors who made significant strides in cooling technology, and who, to their credit, helped make hotter days bearable. Professor William Cullen made his mark by evaporating liquids in a vacuum, thus creating refrigeration tech as early as 1748. Way before Carrier was even born. About a century later, a Florida doctor named John Gorey came up with a steam engine-based system to cool air for his patients. He dubbed his invention an ice machine. You'd think an invention like that would have been the talk of the town during the Industrial Revolution. Unfortunately, Gorey's efforts to patent and popularize his machine were met with opposition. What happened after the AC was invented? Well, some folks were still clinging to their old-school Victorian outlook, wary of the surge of new machines and technology. But Carrier was an eager, sharp-minded engineer, ready to leverage fresh science and mechanics, and the business world was all ears. Manufacturers from various sectors, from leather to pasta, were increasingly aware of how shifting weather could pose a threat to their products. Carrier's gear started garnering more attention, fueled by positive press coverage. The AC slowly became a household name in the 20th century. But what did people do about the heat before that? Let's look at some creative ideas people used to bring comfort into their homes. You never know when this might come in handy. Well, firstly, and this might sound a bit ancient, but many people made use of caves, Mother Nature's own AC if you'd like. You see, underground vibes usually hang around a comfy temperature all year long. So people would find themselves a cozy cave or craft a home on a hillside to reap the benefits of the Earth's natural cooling properties. When people saw how cool the stones in the caves stayed, a light bulb went off. They started using similar materials, like stone or brick, to build homes above ground, hoping to mimic that cave-like chill. Here's something you can try at home. Ever damped a pillowcase and placed it in front of a fan? The air that breezes through it turns out pretty cool. Ancient civilizations like the Egyptians, Indians, Romans, and Greeks were all over this trick. They'd moisten mats or sheets and hang them in open spaces or doorways, creating a delightful draft of cool air in their homes. And let's not forget the crucial role of architecture. Imagine beautifully carved archways, grand windows, and lofty ceilings that encouraged outdoor breezes to swoop in and create cross-ventilation. People also built porches in the shade, crafting a perfect spot to escape the afternoon heat and chill out in the evening. Trees were another ace up their sleeves. Homeowners would often plant trees on the east and west sides of their homes. These green leafy canopies served double duty. Not only did they block the scorching rays of the sun, but they also cooled down the wind that rustled through their leaves and into the house. Plus, come winter, the trees would shed their leaves, letting the sun peek through to naturally heat up the house. Now, if all of this seems like too much work and you just wanted a quick cool down, there were always fans at your service. Early fans were simple and functional, made from stuff like leaves, feathers, paper, or fabric. Crafted in half or semicircle designs, they were easy to hold and wave around. The 19th century brought us the game-changer electric fans. What if 99% of humanity disappeared? First off, we're talking about a massive reduction in people, leaving only 80 million humans on the entire planet. But hey, don't panic just yet. Let's see how this wild ride would unfold. Imagine bustling cities turned into ghost towns, empty highways and quiet neighborhoods. It'd be like a never-ending vacation for those left behind. Of course, there'd be some challenges to tackle, like whoops, untended gas mains causing fires, and those abandoned chemical storage facilities and industrial plants might create some pollution. Oh, and let's not forget about abandoned nuclear power plants. Wild animals would be more free, and poor domestic cattle and sheep would struggle in cold northern climates. To make things worse, stored gasoline wouldn't last long because it's not so great at staying stable. Let's get to the silver lining. With only 80 million people, there would be plenty of resources. Organizing and salvaging whatever's left would be totally doable, especially in smaller countries like Belgium. They'd probably have a, "Hey, we got this" attitude. They'd have just around 120,000 folks left, all within a couple of hours' drive from each other. That is, of course, if this remaining 1% of the world's population is scattered around the planet equally based on countries' populations before this event happened. In this case, pretty much every nation would face a similar situation. Imagine South Korea with 500,000 people, mostly hanging out together. Brazil would have 2 million inhabitants chilling out along the Atlantic coast. Hopefully, unlike those movies where post-apocalyptic gangs go mad, the survivors would try to stick together in their old communities. These resourceful fellas would band together in new family and village communities, and they'd have the knowledge and skills to handle any troublemakers. Remember, we're social creatures, and we'd want to stick together to face the unknown. Well, at least we wouldn't have to start from scratch here. We'd have a major advantage. All the knowledge accumulated by humanity would still be with us. If we had electricity and internet available, we would be okay. So, would we re-industrialize? Yeah, we would. We'd have tools and machines still lying around, giving us a head start. Sure, renewable energy might be tricky at first, and we might have to rely on fossil fuels like coal, but we're resourceful, and we'd find a way to make it work. Plus, we'd have some brilliant minds with critical skills who'd step up to the challenge. This type of stuff kind of happened in real life. Think of the historical collapse events. They made an epic comeback that spanned centuries. Back in the 14th century, a plague struck and claimed the lives of up to half of all Europeans. The Middle East was also impacted, with around 1/10 of the global population succumbing to the disease. Surprisingly, this devastating event had little negative impact on Europe's technological and economic progress. And 2 centuries later, the population eventually rebounded to how it was before. 2 other instances of collapse are that of Rome and the Bronze Age. Both brought down impressive civilizations that had enjoyed technological advancements and economic prosperity and engaged in international trade. The Bronze Age collapse occurred between 1200 and 1150 BCE, leading to the fall of Mycenaean, Mycenaean Greece and Hittite civilizations, and the weakening of Egyptian and Assyrian civilizations. To this day, historians remain uncertain about the exact reasons behind this collapse. Rome, once boasting over 1 million inhabitants and serving as the seat of the Western Roman Empire for centuries, faced a dramatic decline in the 5th century. Within a few decades, the entire empire collapsed. It took until the 1930s for Rome to surpass its previous peak population. Fortunately, there are no historical examples of collapse events that resulted in more than 20% of the global population's demise. Many aspects of our physical infrastructure, such as machines, tools, and buildings, would still be intact and usable, placing us in a far better position than in 2500 BCE. The remaining 80 million survivors would have access to the wealth of knowledge accumulated by humanity. Moreover, some individuals might hold critical professions like engineers or chemists. It's quite likely that some people would have agricultural knowledge, helping feed the population. Okay, but let's make this scenario more personal. If you woke up one day to find 99% of the population missing, it would undoubtedly be an overwhelming and surreal experience. Survival would become your immediate priority, and your actions would largely depend on the resources and skills available to you. Here's what you would probably do. You'd take a moment to comprehend what's happened. This sudden disappearance of people would be shocking and confusing. Your friends and family would most probably be gone too, like it happened in Avengers. Your primary focus would be securing essential survival items, such as food, water, shelter, and medical supplies. You'd need to visit nearby grocery stores, pharmacies, and warehouses to gather provisions that could last for an extended period. Then you'd need to find other survivors. I mean, many people now lack essential skills like growing food, purifying water, or self-defense. You'd need to start learning them if there was no internet and no YouTube tutorials to rely on. Well, libraries, museums, and educational institutions have tons of information about the world and its history. Once you formed a community, you and your fellas would have to protect it like there's no tomorrow. You might feel like there isn't one at that point anyway. While most technology might still work initially, you'd need to ensure the protection of power sources. To do that, you'd have to be very cautious. The world would be in turmoil, so you'd need to remain vigilant and cautious of potential dangers. Without proper law enforcement and governance, there could be risks from wild animals, natural disasters, or even other survivors who might be hostile. Now let's explore the best and worst case scenarios. The sudden disappearance of so many people would create widespread chaos, leading to mass accidents and damage. With the absence of healthcare professionals and medical supplies, diseases could spread, leading to health crises. Food production and distribution systems would collapse, and food shortages and famine could become a real possibility. Looting and violence could occur since desperate people would search for resources and try to survive. The best case scenario is that after all this chaos, survivors would eventually come together to support one another and form resilient communities. The world would have significantly fewer carbon emissions, leading to a positive impact on the environment. With a small population, resources like food and water might be more abundant and sustainable in the long run. Without the constraints of a highly populated world, people could focus on individual passions, arts, and creativity. With advanced technology still available, survivors might start working on preserving knowledge and advancing scientific research. But overall, the world would change drastically, and the future would be uncertain. Your actions and the actions of other survivors would play a crucial role in shaping the new world and determining its trajectory. Feeling like a fishing pro? Head to the nearest water body and try your luck at reeling in some aquatic treats. Now, here's an idea. Become a green thumb superstar. Plant those seeds, nurture your crops, and watch your mini farm flourish. Farm-to-table cuisine, anyone? And how about those furry friends? If you spot any wandering pets, befriend them, and you've got yourself some loyal companions. Now take a deep breath, chin up, and embrace your inner survival guru. Remember, this might be a wild ride, but you've got the spirit and the skills to thrive in this post-apocalyptic feast of life. So go out there.
What do you think is common between fruit and pen knives, hamburgers and plastic gloves, soda and coins? All this can end up in people's stomachs. And what connects peas and air? These two things can be found in people's lungs. Let's find out what weird things doctors found inside their patients' bodies, shall we? A boy in India was playing in a river and accidentally swallowed a small fish. It got not into the stomach, but into the lungs. When the boy was examined in a hospital, Doctors discovered that the fish in his lungs was still alive. The doctors managed to extract the swimming creature and save the boy's life. A 75-year-old man came to a doctor and complained of severe discomfort in the chest area. He was sure he had a serious condition, but after examination and tests, doctors found out that a pea had grown in his lungs. It grew, and therefore the man was experiencing severe discomfort. Thing is, he once swallowed a pea and it went down the wrong way. And there were good conditions in the lungs. The pea began to sprout leaves, but the doctors successfully removed it. This woman from California experienced the sensation of a foreign object in the eye and impaired vision. When she went to the hospital, an ophthalmologist found several contact lenses under her upper eyelids. He pulled them out, but there was more. As a result, the doctor took out 23 disposable contact lenses. The doctor said the eyes had lost sensitivity after many years of wearing lenses. The woman didn't notice the missing lenses and put on new ones every time. It continued until the massive stack began to cause discomfort. With age, the gap on the upper eyelid became very deep, so all the lenses had enough space to fit there. She was lucky that everything ended well and her eyes returned to normal. The woman wanted to get into the Guinness Book of Records. She asked the doctors to record a video of the extraction of lenses, but it turned out this record belonged to another woman living in Britain. Doctors found, wait for it, 27 contact lenses in her eyes. The man came to the hospital because of stomach pangs. Doctors conducted a thorough examination and found no problems there, except 40 small knives in the man's stomach. The patient swallowed penknives for 2 years. Some of them were closed and some were completely open. The doctors removed all of them and saved the man's life. And then the patient said what had happened to him. According to his words, he just felt an impulse and a desire to swallow all these knives. Of course, the doctor realized that he had some mental issues. This problem is called pica. This strange human condition causes a strong desire to eat or swallow inedible objects. Pica cases are quite common and have been known since ancient times. But psychologists and doctors have not been able to determine the causes of this condition. Now, a 55-year-old man came to the hospital with a similar disorder. There were 10 plastic gloves stuck in his intestines. Surgeons operated on him to remove foreign objects. Luckily, they saved the patient's life. 40 pen knives, plastic gloves, lenses in the eyes. All this is not as strange as several sets of cutleries chilling in this woman's stomach. In the 70s, doctors found 78 forks and spoons in the patient's stomach. Doctors pulled out each item with extreme care so as not to damage the internal organs. After a difficult operation, they asked her why she had done that, and she replied she just liked to eat cutlery. Apparently, she also has pica disorder. A young 18-year-old girl often suffered with stomach problems. After each meal, she was sick and lost weight. Just within several days, she lost about 40 pounds. Then her condition became much worse when stomach pains and bloating appeared. Doctors performed a CT scan and saw a strange formation in the upper part of the stomach. Further examination revealed that the girl had an 11-pound ball of hair inside her. This is the weight of 10 basketballs. Hair wasn't digested by the gastric juice, so it accumulated in the girl's belly. Talk about a hairball. A New Yorker turned to a dermatologist because of a strange mole on her skin. The woman claimed it was constantly changing. The doctor carefully examined the mole and noticed that it was not only changing, but moving. It turned out that it was a tick hidden under the skin. The dermatologist easily removed it and sent the patient home. And wasn't she ticked off? A man in Germany had headaches for many years. Then he began to see poorly with his right eye. Finally, he decided to see a doctor and found out that a 4-inch pencil was stuck in his head. It got there during an accident in the patient's childhood. It spent about 15 years in his head, but the man didn't know anything. Doctors successfully removed the foreign object from the head, and the man completely recovered sometime after surgery. A 75-year-old woman from Britain felt something wasn't right with her lungs. She came to the doctor, and they said she had a lung infection. The woman's daughter didn't believe him and decided to go to another hospital. The daughter brought her mother to another doctor, and they revealed the cause of the woman's condition. It turned out she had swallowed a denture that stuck in her throat. The false teeth were successfully pulled out, and the woman finally made a full chest breathe. Didn't she miss wearing her denture? I think that would have been a clue. The relationship between a man and a woman can lead to unexpected consequences. A resident of China quarreled with her boyfriend and decided to express her anger in an unusual way. She swallowed 20 cobblestones and thought they would come out naturally, but the stones stuck in the stomach and started knocking against each other. Of course, the girl went to the hospital where doctors removed them. YouTube rules do not permit me to make jokes about getting stoned, but come on, it's right there. A man in the UK decided to propose to his girlfriend, but first he went to a jewelry store to pick out a ring. The store manager showed him several options, and the man chose a very expensive and beautiful one. The problem was that the buyer didn't have money for this gem, so he decided to resort to a trick. When the seller turned away, the man just took the ring and swallowed it. The jeweler saw that it was gone and called the police. The man was sure the officers would search him and find nothing, but they came with a metal detector. When the police realized where the ring was, they put him in a cell, waiting for the body to return it naturally. I'd kind of like to know what the jewelry store told the next person who wanted that ring. In France, doctors faced a weird case when a man with abdominal pain came to them. During the examination, the doctors found out that there was something in his stomach. The man's family warned doctors that the patient liked to swallow coins. The doctors took an X-ray and noticed a large mass of foreign objects weighing 12 pounds. It's almost the weight of a bowling ball. When the operation began, doctors pulled 350 coins worth $650 out of the patient's stomach. But that wasn't all. Doctors removed a necklace and a needle from the body. Apparently, this man also had pica disorder. Now, sometimes brushing your teeth can be a dangerous activity. One 55-year-old man accidentally swallowed a toothbrush and did nothing. He lived for 2 weeks with a toothbrush in his stomach, and when he started to feel discomfort, he went to the hospital. Doctors were able to extract the brush and cure the patient. This 31-year-old came to the hospital with a sore throat. When the doctors examined her, they saw a fish bone stuck in her thyroid gland. Somehow it moved there from the swallowing channel. And this man from North Carolina began to experience fatigue and chronic cough. He lived with this condition for 2 years, then decided to go to the hospital. The doctors examined his lungs and found a plastic fork there. When they removed it, the man immediately felt better. You think? If you think about it, we love concepts like the Sorcerer's Stone, the Fountain of Youth, and, vampires, for one common reason. We all want to know how it would be to have everlasting life. Some researchers argue that there's no limit to how long we can live. The no-limit camp argues that as long as we keep making scientific advancements and taking care of ourselves, we could potentially live forever, or until you spend down your savings. Meanwhile, the finite lifespan fellas say that our bodies have a built-in expiration date, and there's only so much we can do to push it back. A study suggests that the maximum human lifespan may be around 150 years. The researchers analyzed data about the world's oldest individuals over the past few decades and concluded that there is an expiration date for our lives. Overall, the study provides new insights into the limits of the human lifespan and may help guide future research into the biology of aging and the development of new treatments for age-related diseases. So, let's hypothesize that we can actually push the inevitable end off as long as possible. What if we live for 300 years? In this way, we would still be stuck with a finite lifespan, but it wouldn't be too short. Living forever may not be as appealing because we don't want to reach a point where we get so bored and wish to have a finite life. Living for 300 years would significantly impact every aspect of life. I'll start with the concept of aging and how we perceive it. I know being young and old is subjective, but we are thought of as middle-aged at around 50 years old in our current lifespan. If our lifespan triples, at 50 years old, we might be considered a teenager. Since we have more than 2 centuries to live, it's like every minute we had suddenly became 3 minutes long. When we hit the age of 30, we feel like it's a milestone and that 1/3 of our life is over. But with a longer lifespan, we wouldn't experience this feeling until we reach the age of 100. Here, the critical aspect is whether we are going to keep the same biological and emotional capacity or not. Normally, our adolescent brain continues to develop and doesn't reach full maturity until approximately 25 to 30 years of age. In my scenario, this notion will remain the same. Yet we will probably go to school for a more extended period and learn a whole bunch of new things. Time to speak new languages. How about organ replacement and AI lectures? The education system and curriculum will indeed be changed. We would have more time to read and learn. You get your diploma, or you don't pursue higher education and spare that time to master a skill, like being a carpenter. Now you need to earn money. I'm sure that concept won't change. Let's find you a job. You probably have different options to choose from, and retirement might not be necessary until much later in life. In this way, you might have extra time to explore different careers and interests. Pursue your goals, take risks, and develop your career. Let's talk about relationships. We now have situationships, open relationships, and so on. I can't imagine the new dynamics we would have in a longer life. The age of marriage and the decision to start a family will all transform. Family structures and roles would change to accommodate these longer lifespans. You'd be grandparents, maybe at the age of 230. Yet, it could turn into a magical experience. We could have even deeper bonds. Imagine you've got centuries to hang out with your best friend. We would have more time to get to know each other and explore our common interests. It's not just us who got to experience the trial version of eternity. The world's resources would be affected too. We would have much longer lives to reproduce. We either overpopulate the globe or keep our existing family member numbers and become underpopulated. If we overpopulate, we'll have to fight for resources. This can quickly turn into a dystopian book. You know what? I really like this idea. I could try writing a book in my 3 centuries-long alternative life. Anyway, it's not just the resources. Ecosystems, animals, and plants would all be affected by us. Hopefully, we'll find new ways to prevent or recover from these problems. How do we solve these issues, you might ask? By advances in science and technology. We would have more time to devote to research and development. We will explore the unknown territories of our planet and universe via science and technology. This could lead to breakthroughs in medicine, energy, transportation, and other fields. I mean, think of astrophysics. We could even find ways to travel to other planets. Since our lifespan is extended, astronauts may complete presumably impossible expeditions. In our hypothetical situation, we'd age at a slower pace. Since we don't wake up one day and start living till 300, medical improvements should be responsible for providing a longer life for us. New treatments and interventions would be there to help people live healthier. Healthcare policies and practices will change too. Good luck to health insurance companies and life insurance. Now, let's talk wellness. People would likely place a greater emphasis on maintaining their mental well-being too. Surely, we would have great memories and enjoy life, but there'll be hard times too. New wellness methods might be seen. As a social science field, psychology might also find new ways to shed light on the human psyche. Plus, we would have more time to see the world and explore new horizons. This would help us enjoy life more. So, bon voyage! Next up, we have the economy. It's one of the most important areas that'll be affected by our longer lifespan. It could potentially result in a larger workforce and more accumulated wealth over time. Or it could lead to a higher demand for resources like food and housing. Then, the states have to be involved to keep the balance and help people meet their needs. Finance, the economy, and everyday life have to find new ways to coexist. If we had a chance to see 2323, maybe we wouldn't use paper money and coins, but move on to a completely digital system. But hey, we already have that right now. Think of PayPal, debit cards, and the like. It's all digital, but I digress. Art and culture. Think of your favorite writer or director. What if they had decades more to produce amazing art pieces? What about physiology and sociology? Try to picture the new ideas and schools that will come. Such a drastic change in the lifespan would also result in a fundamental shift in the intellectual sense. It alters the way we think and spend our time. It changes resources and our entire interpretation of life. This change can lead to a shift in the way we consume products, such as clothes. Have you heard of the term quiet luxury? It refers to high-quality and subtly stylish items that are expensive. It's associated with the popular HBO series Succession. Quiet luxury brands are only recognizable to those who are in the know, and they're appreciated for their refined aesthetics that go beyond their price tags. The trend of conspicuous logos and branding is starting to decrease for the consumers of these products. Maybe in the future, there'll be times when people have found ways to truly embrace a fashion style that merges sustainability, accessibility, and the great look all together. An average American will meet 10,000 people in their lifetime. That's a lot of people, y'all. Now, let's do some math. Out of those 10,000 people we meet, how many will we make an impact on? If we're lucky, maybe 25? That doesn't sound too impressive, does it? But even the smallest act of kindness can create a ripple effect that changes the course of someone's life. And when you add up all those little acts of kindness, they can make a world of difference. If we live for an additional 200 years, this number will surely increase. Personally, I'm a member of the team YOLO. You only live once. Why not make the most of it? Me? Well, I really don't want to live for hundreds of years if I can't bring my dog with me. To be the apple of one's eye. To have butterflies in your stomach. To fall head over heels. These are just some ways of saying we're falling in love. A feeling so overwhelming that it makes our hearts beat faster and our palms sweatier. And as much as we think that love is something that's happening in our hearts, actually, it's happening in our brains. Now here's Sarah. We'll follow her around to get a closer look into the science of love in our brains. Not stalking, just following. She's going on her first date with a guy she met on a dating app. She spent the entire evening trying to figure out what to wear, and when the time finally came to meet her date, she was feeling dizzy and her stomach was tingling. Most of us can relate to these feelings, which psychologists call anticipation. Anticipation. Science explains that this is caused by our brain releasing a large amount of cortisol, also known as the stress hormone. The release of cortisol makes us get into a fight-or-flight mode. This means that if her date is 20 minutes late and they don't text Sarah with an explanation, she'll probably leave the restaurant as fast as she can. Dating can be tricky for our system because it's so uncertain. Will Sarah like Tom? They're both risking something by being here, but since no risk goes unacknowledged, falling in love triggers another part of our brain. This part is known as the awards and compensation area or the ventral tegmental area, the VTA. When the VTA is triggered, we feel satiated and motivated. We activate the VTA when we eat something sweet and delicious or when we quench our thirst. But there's a trick to it. It turned out that Tom didn't show up on their date and Sarah felt rejected. At this moment, the VTA is highly active. This part of the brain is responsible for our cravings. And you know what they say, we want what we can't have. But Sarah tries again. She goes on another date and meets Dave. And they turn out to be a match. After a couple of dates, all Sarah can think about is Dave. Actually, she thinks about him about 80% of her waking hours, and this is very normal. According to behavioral neuroscientist Dr. Sandra Langslag, people in early love stages can think about their loved ones for up to 90% of their time. Yes, falling in love is like an obsession. This obsession is intensified when the VTA releases the feel-good neurotransmitter known as dopamine. Ooh, can't get enough of dopamine. At this moment, Sarah starts to feel euphoric and more drawn toward Dave. Everything about him pleases her, and for a moment, she believes she has found the perfect guy. Now, the reasons why Sarah and Dave click with each other can also be explained by brain chemistry. One of the reasons can be due to the so-called pheromones. Both parties can pick up on each other's pheromones, which are natural chemical signals that convey important genetic or even physical information. Basically, their brains understood that their genetics matched well together, which intensified the production of estrogen, in Sarah's case, and testosterone in Dave's case. At this phase, they both tend to see each other as flawless. The rose-colored glasses phase happens because the part of the brain that is in operation talks louder than our prefrontal cortex, which hosts our ability for critical thinking. So we literally can't criticize our beloved. But this won't last forever. With time, Sarah and Dave start sharing intimate secrets and even a daily routine. They're entering a new phase of their relationship known as an attachment or compassionate love. At this moment, our brain starts releasing oxytocin and vasopressin, known as pair bonding hormones. They signal trust, feelings of social support, and attachment. They both feel safer in the relationship, and they also know they can count on each other to build a happy future together. In this way, romantic love is similar to other forms of love, as these hormones also help bond families and friendships. Now, here's a curious side effect of the release of oxytocin. Sarah has been having a hard time at her job since her company is cutting down on half of the staff. Everyone in her company is afraid they'll get fired and people's stress levels are skyrocketing. But Sarah is managing to keep her stress under control. The fact that she's in a long-term committed relationship helps her feel calmer, and she owes all of this to the constant release of oxytocin by her brain. A 2019 research showed that strong romantic love bonds can make hardship more tolerable. The research asked 102 people to dive their hands into ice-cold water for a few minutes. And out of these participants, those who were in committed relationships appeared to experience less stress or pain. Even those whose partners weren't beside them during the task. It was enough just to rely on a mental picture of their partners. Now, that's true love, huh? Some other weird things can happen when you're in love, like telepathy, for example, and I'm not joking. But researchers call it neural synchrony, which means that couples tend to share similar thought patterns. Professor Zoe Donaldson, who conducted the study, says that the more a couple is connected, the more synchrony they can show. Another research also showed that couples can even synchronize their heartbeats when sleeping side by side. And no, it's not only us humans that fall in love and can experience the things we've been talking about. Some animals are proven to feel attachment bonds toward each other. For example, albatrosses keep coming back to the same partner their whole lives. They migrate all year round, but still come back to a repeated spot where they meet and greet each other once again. Now, it's normal that with time, the rose-colored glasses fade and the prefrontal cortex can finally do its job. Judgment and critical thinking arise again, and both parties begin to see flaws in their beloved. Sarah doesn't like the way Dave always leaves his socks spread across the apartment, and Dave thinks Sarah watches too much Netflix. The thing is, sometimes these little things become too much, and the relationships may simply end. Surprisingly enough, breakups are also managed by the brain. Although Sarah thinks she did the right thing when breaking up with Dave, she feels something close to physical pain. That's because heartbreaks activate the insular cortex, a region of the brain that processes pain. But the insular cortex doesn't distinguish emotional pain from physical pain. So, heartbreak can hurt as much as spraining your ankle. As the days pass, Sarah finds herself daydreaming about contacting Dave again. While cleaning up her house, she found some of the things Dave forgot to take with him. Sometimes the desire to reach out feels overwhelming, like extreme hunger or thirst. This happens because the VTA is being activated again, the motivation and reward center that drives feelings of longing. The same part of the brain that was activated at the beginning of their story together. This emotional whirlwind also activates Sarah's body alarm system, the stress axis, and since she is producing less oxytocin, it may seem difficult to handle everything she's feeling. It does get better though. With time, the higher cortical region is activated. This region is responsible for overseeing reason and impulse control. It pumps the brakes on such irrational cravings, so the urge to text Dave will slowly fade away. This isn't Sarah's first breakup, and she knows she will be okay with time. Now, when she was younger though, in her teen years, it was way harder to recover from a breakup. That's because the higher cortical region was still maturing, so teens tend to have fewer self-control mechanisms in situations such as these. Well, soon enough, Sarah will feel like meeting someone new, and once again, she'll hop on board this roller coaster ride we call love.
Respect. Everybody wants it, right? But that doesn't mean we get the fair share of respect we think we deserve. What if I told you that there are some easy tricks you can use in your daily life to be more respected? We're going to break down some classic body language that automatically conveys more self-confidence. And who knows, maybe you'll walk out of this video acting like a queen or king yourself. So, to be respected, you need to master your communication skills. But if you think that communication begins only after you open your mouth, then you've got it wrong. Personality expert Vanessa Van Edwards says that up to 70% of our communication happens non-verbally. It means that people respond to your body language. Try to do a brief audit on the non-verbal signals you put into the world. For instance, you came to a party where you barely know anyone. Will you walk into the room shrinking yourself, or will you walk tall and confident? How you manage your body language is the first thing that will make people decide whether they'll respect you or not. Not to be tragic, but it's kind of true. All of this happens at an unconscious level though. It takes around 7 seconds for someone to have their first impression of you. This is why the way you walk, talk, and present yourself matters. If there was a manual on how to be respected, eye contact would be at the top of that list. You've probably heard that eye contact is a must-do in any given situation, right? People who can't look into another person's eyes in a conversation are considered insecure and even weak. Sure, but it's also pretty uncomfortable when you're talking to someone and that person won't stop staring at your face, right? That's because studies show that keeping 100% of eye contact with people at all times is the most unnatural thing a person could do. Truth is, nobody looks into another person's eye without naturally looking away for a second or two to think about the conversation. Note this down. The percentage of eye contact that is acceptable and considered valuable is something around 50 to 70%. So, if your main goal is to be treated with more respect, you need to be able to assess the situation you find yourself in. Let's say you're in an argument. Sustaining direct eye contact can show that you are firmly set on your point of view and have no intentions of backing down. But if your goal is to bring harmony to a conflict, then you are more than encouraged to look away from time to time. Looking down will show you don't want to fight and would rather resolve the conflict in a more diplomatic manner. Now that that's covered, let's talk about hand gestures. Here, the golden rule is you need to be as big as your crowd. To get attention in large crowds, you need to scale up your hand gestures. I'm talking wide open arms while you're telling a story. Anything that will make you look bigger than you are. Another tip is always showing your palms. Hiding your hands from your audience will not gain you any respect points. Keep in mind that when you hide your palms, it sends a signal that you are hiding something from people. As a result, this can make you come across as less trustworthy. So keep your hands out of your pockets, even if you're extremely uncomfortable. And forget about gripping that chair. This sends some anxiety-like vibes. Also, never rush. Make sure your body movements convey how relaxed you are. Never in a hurry and never intimidated. This helps to convey a sense of power. You want to show that you have power over most situations in your life. Most introverts might flinch just thinking about this tip, but don't worry, we've got you covered too. Even if speaking to a large crowd might make you nervous, the important thing is to own your image. You might be the quiet one in the room, but people are still perceiving you. So, own your style and be conscious of the colors you choose to wear and the props you carry around. All of what you present counts. Think of it as your own personal branding. And don't be scared to be authentic. The more authentic you are, the more likely you are to be respected for simply being you. In Hollywood, we have great examples of shy, yet extremely charismatic and lovable characters. Let's take Tom Holland, for example. Tom is the actor behind the new Spider-Man franchise. Now, he may act all tough and brave on screen, but behind the scenes, he's quite an introverted person. Personality experts that analyze Tom Holland's interviews say that he has a trick we should all learn from. He manages to turn his shyness and nervousness into confidence, and he does that following the simple tricks we'll show you here. Under pressure, we all tend to show our discomfort more openly. Our bodies automatically hunch, and people can see in our faces that we're not at ease. We're more likely to say something that makes no sense at all. Witnessing situations such as this is uncomfortable for both or all participants. Be it in job interviews or talk shows, your audience won't respond too positively to your uneasiness. But there's a way out. Next time you say something you think is wrong or make a mistake mid-sentence, try making fun of yourself. That's a much better option than looking at the floor in front of you wishing you'd disappear. Remember, it's all about body language. If you manage to convey that you are comfortable even in an uncomfortable situation, your audience will feel the same way. And remember to speak slowly. Speaking like you're in fast-forward mode will only convey nervousness and insecurity. A slow, paused speech will make your audience respect you a tad bit more, but don't go making that pause too long either. That's just weird. This next trick might surprise you, but if you want to be treated with respect, be open, vulnerable, and honest. One of the world's most respected personalities today is Oprah. And if she has taught us anything over the years, it's that honesty counts. Being the first to share intimate or even embarrassing stories about yourself has a twofold effect. First, people will perceive you as a leader, as someone who is not afraid to take initiative. Being a leader does not necessarily mean dominating the conversation or stealing the spotlight. It just means making the first bold move. In this case, you're not only a leader, but also perceived as courageous. Way to go, you! Just a quick reminder here, in case you didn't know. The word courage originally comes from the French word cœur, which translates to the English word heart. So quite literally, to do things with courage means to do them from the heart. And second, well, when you open yourself up with honesty, this sets the ground for other people to feel comfortable enough to share their stories. Beautiful, right? Now, write this down. Always try telling a story from an angle people can relate to. We connect with and respect other people's humanity, so honesty goes a long way here. A great part of Oprah's appeal has to do with relatability. She sets the stage to connect with people who attend her show and speaks eye to eye with them. She listens actively and makes people feel heard and valued. Above all, Oprah finds a way to relate to people's stories, oftentimes being the first one to share intimate stories about herself. I guess that's why so many people call her a queen, huh? At the end of the day, the important thing is for you to feel comfortable and safe in your interactions. These tricks might help. But being yourself also goes a long way in earning some well-rounded respect.
Love is an open door. All you need is love. Can't help falling in love with you. Well, I bet you've heard all these songs before. The main idea behind them is one and the same. It's that love is the greatest feeling of them all, even though sometimes it might break your heart. But you know what? Love actually has nothing to do with the heart, but everything to do with the brain. So join me as I explore the science behind this feeling, which makes people write songs, paint masterpieces, and do all sorts of crazy things. So I want you to imagine your body, the whole system, as a factory now. Let's see what happens in there and which hormones and brain systems, employees, come to play when you begin a new relationship. It's real teamwork, that's for sure. When you're at the beginning stages of your new relationship, everything becomes all about your partner, right? When you're not with them, you daydream about them. And when you're with them, you just want to stay together all the time. Psychologists call this exhilarating first stage of love infatuation or passionate love. When you're deeply in love with someone, your brain activity in the ventral tegmental area increases like crazy. In case you're wondering, that is the reward processing and motivation section of your brain. It activates when you do things like eat something sweet and delicious or drink a cold glass of water when you're thirsty. And when it's switched on, happiness hormones like dopamine are released, which in turn teach your brain to repeat the same behaviors with the expectation of receiving the same initial reward. You know, it's basically the same mechanism like how puppies learn to give paw to get the yummy treat. So, this increased VTA activity is not only why love makes you feel intensely energetic and over the moon, but also why you can't keep away from your partner. Yet again, the funny thing is, such high levels of dopamine are also known to be responsible for insomnia and decreased appetite. That means those over-the-top romance novels sometimes get it right when they write their characters are so in love that they can't eat or can't sleep. The first stage of your new relationship is also the time when you may find it hard to see any faults in your partner. Putting on rose-colored glasses like this is all thanks to love's impact on higher cortical regions of your brain. Normally, the brain's cognitive center becomes activated when we make judgments and decisions, as well as engage in critical thought. However, it is proven that those who are in a new relationship show decreased and slower activity there. So, it's no wonder you think your partner is perfect, even though your best friend might not like them that much. Love is blind indeed. All this brain activity and hormone action will turn you into a version of the cheerful SpongeBob as well. By acting on the pleasure center of the brain, love lowers your enjoyment threshold. This means it makes you feel joyful and elevated a lot easier and faster. You start to develop a more optimistic perspective of the world around you and get less annoyed by things. That must be why we also love being in love, right? Well, the initial stage of love might be a whirlwind of fuzzy emotions and mental activity. It usually only lasts a few months. Then a new and longer-lasting era begins, attachment or compassionate love. Think of this as junior employees handing the task to seniors in our imaginary love factory. Now, in this stage, your relationship develops into a state where you may feel more relaxed around your partner, as well as more committed to them. This is largely thanks to pair bonding hormones, vasopressin and oxytocin, which are often nicknamed as the cuddle hormone. They indicate feelings of attachment, social support, and trust. Once these hormones come into play, the difference between romantic love and any other forms of love actually sort of vanishes. The reason for that is because they're also the hormones that help bond families and friendships. But their duties are not limited to that. Oxytocin can help release stress hormones too. That's why you feel relaxed when you spend time with your loved one. However, this is also the stage where some problems with your relationship may become more evident. Yes, you and your partner start having a more honest understanding and a deeper connection. But with this new bond, the previous suspension of judgment you had fades as well. In other words, your rose-colored glasses turn into regular glasses. This may result in two different ways. You and your partner either tackle your issues and create an even stronger bond, or you decide you're no longer good for each other and go your separate ways. If the latter happens, no matter for what reason your relationship ends, the brain is all to blame for the pain that follows the heartbreak. The torment of a breakup activates the insular cortex. It's the region of the brain that processes all kinds of pain, from physical to social. So, both the pain you feel from a paper cut or from being rejected by someone are processed here. Science shows that when looking at their ex-partner's photos, people who are going through a heartbreak still showed increased activity in the VTA. That means the motivation and reward center that was initially responsible for your desire to be with your partner at the beginning of your relationship is still at work even after they're gone. And this is what might cause you to daydream about your ex and even seek contact with them. So much so that the urge to reach out may feel overwhelming, like an extreme hunger or thirst. So don't worry, nobody is judging you if you text them by mistake or say hi or anything. However, this roller coaster of emotions does take its toll. The bitterness and the heartache activate your body's alarm system, the stress axis, and this causes you to feel shaken and restless. But when it comes to this, it's a good thing that nothing lasts forever. As time goes on, the brain's higher cortical regions, which are in charge of reasoning and impulse control, say enough is enough, and pump the brakes on all the distress and yearning. And you know how they say the first heartbreak hits the hardest? It's because these regions are still maturing and making connections during adolescence. So, what do you have to do to ease your pain and go through heartbreak as smoothly as possible? Well, exercising, spending time with your friends, or even watching your favorite movie can help. Maybe make sure it's not a rom-com though. Such activities actually help you calm down the stress response by triggering the release of the feel-good hormone dopamine. And this may be a cliché, but trust me, time and support from loved ones do heal everything. In a recent survey, 56% of Americans have said to believe in love at first sight, and every third person reports that they have experienced it. However, now you know the biology of love. It can't be that all these hormones immediately kick in when you meet a potential love interest, right? There surely must be a psychological process behind why we fell in love too. Like maybe you would first have to get to know them? Keeping that in mind, psychologist Arthur Aaron came up with 36 questions that can quicken this process and possibly help people who are at the dating stage fall in love quicker. These involve questions like, if you could wake up tomorrow having gained any one quality or ability, what would it be? And if you could change anything about the way you were raised, what would it be? According to Aaron, to be able to answer them, you and your partner need to be vulnerable, and this can deepen the intimacy between you two, which is the key to love.
You're just about to fluff up your pillows and get dressed in your favorite pajamas. You then set your alarm for the next day. It's gonna ring in 8 hours. Yeah, that should do the trick. Isn't that what your doctor suggested? But as the alarm starts ringing the next morning, you wake up feeling more tired than you were when you got into bed. Are those 8 hours of recommended sleep just a myth? Sorry to break it to you, but as natural as sleep is for human beings, some of us can indeed be bad at snoozing. And it might have something to do with your circadian rhythm. Let me explain. The circadian rhythm is a natural internal process a lot of living organisms have. Think of it as the project manager of our bodies that's in charge of our schedules for falling asleep and waking up in the morning. It also helps to synchronize our bodies with the environment and the amount of light we're exposed to during the day. We're not the only creatures with a circadian rhythm. It's actually found in most living beings, including animals, plants, and even some bacteria. It plays a crucial role in regulating sleep, feeding needs, and even hormone production. During the day, the body produces hormones such as cortisol, which helps us stay alert and awake. At night, the body begins to produce melatonin, which makes us feel tired and promotes sleep. The circadian rhythm helps to let your body know when it's appropriate to generate these hormones, so it can function properly. When our circadian rhythm is messed up, like when we have jet lag or work irregular shifts at our jobs, our sleep patterns may become disrupted as well. What happens next? we can find it difficult to fall asleep, or we end up waking up frequently throughout the night. Or, as you might have experienced already, we end up feeling tired and groggy during the day, even if we've slept a reasonable number of hours during the night. To make sure our sleep pattern remains healthy, we need to have a consistent sleep schedule. It may also help if we expose ourselves to natural light during the day and avoid looking at screens, like our phone or tablet, before bedtime. By following these rules and ensuring that our body's internal clock is functioning okay, we can improve the quality of our sleep and overall well-being. We now know how important sleep is, but how much sleep do we actually need? The explanation is kind of complex. For starters, it has a lot to do with our age. When we're born, we need the most amount of sleep, somewhere around 14 to 17 hours of snooze time. As we grow older, by the time we're toddlers, we need 11 to 14 hours each day. Most teenagers need 8 to 10 hours of sleep, and by the time we're adults, we should be just fine with as little as 7 hours. Apart from age, genetics also has a lot to do with our sleep needs. Some people are naturally more prone to needing more or less sleep. Also, people who lead more active lifestyles may need more sleep to recover and regenerate their bodies. High levels of stress can affect our sleep and cause people to need more sleep to feel rested. You might have also noticed that you need more sleep when you've caught a cold or when you've eaten too much. Do all of us need to fall asleep at the same hour to feel rested? You've surely heard of some people being night owls, while others are considered larks. Night owls tend to be more energetic and productive at night, while larks are more productive in the morning. Both types of people have their own unique habits and preferences, and there's no right or wrong way to be a night owl or a lark. There are lots of questionnaires you can do online to see which category you fit in best, or you can test it for yourself at home. Try going to bed at different hours for a specific period of time, and see which option fits best for your energy levels throughout the day. How about our sleeping position? Can that also influence how well rested we feel when waking up? Absolutely! And the most effective way to figure out what works best for you is to note everything down in a sleep diary. You'll need to record your sleep habits for at least a week or two to have the best results. Just make sure to switch between falling asleep on your back, your side, or your stomach each night. You don't have to change your favorite sleeping position if you're not having any issues, as long as you wake up feeling well rested. If you do experience problems, here are a couple of things you can try. For example, if you have neck pain, you'll have better rest while sleeping on your back or your side. You can also try using a thicker pillow when sleeping on your side and a thinner one when resting on your back. If your sinuses are the ones keeping you up at night, you can try sleeping on your back with your head a bit more elevated. A thicker pillow should do the trick too. If you have hip or back pain, try sleeping on your back, but place a pillow or a rolled-up towel underneath your knees. It should reduce the pressure on your spine and help relieve the pain. We can't finish our list of facts about sleep without talking about the greatest love story of all. The one we all have with the snooze button, am I right? Does hitting the snooze button really give us some extra time to rest? This might also be the biggest myth of all. Not only is this information untrue, but hitting the snooze button can make us feel groggier in the long run, even though technically we're sleeping more. Those 10-minute intervals of sleep we indulge in over and over again are not a good type of sleep. There simply isn't enough time for us to properly fall back into a deep sleep. Also, there is such a thing as actually sleeping too much, and oversleeping makes you even sleepier during the daytime and can affect your metabolism and your energy levels too. Not to mention, it can be a real nuisance for people sharing the same bed or room with you. Breaking up with the snooze button can be overwhelming, I know. but there are things you can do to soften the blow. For starters, set a realistic alarm. If you're more of a night owl, don't force yourself to wake up really early in the morning if you don't have to. Find a sleeping schedule that works for you, and, most importantly, stick to it. Follow up with getting out of bed as soon as you wake up. The change in posture will trigger the right chemicals in your body that remove your need to go back to sleep. If nothing seems to work, you can even move your alarm clock across the room. If you need to get out of bed to hit the snooze button, you'll be less likely to go back. Just because you don't have any of these problems doesn't mean your sleep patterns are doing great. Some people seem to think that just because they can fall asleep anywhere, they're good sleepers. But that can't be further away from the truth. On average, it should take us 5 to 15 minutes to fall asleep after we go to bed. If it takes longer for an extended amount of time, it may be a sign of insomnia. On the other hand, if falling asleep takes less than 5 minutes, you may be sleep deprived. And it can happen for a lot of different reasons, like stress or even diet changes. It can also mean the sleep you're getting, even if it's the recommended 7 to 9 hours a night, is fragmented or disturbed.
Okay, did you know that people waste around 17 hours of a 45-hour working week? It's 2 whole working days wasted, or a whole week in a month, or 3 months out of a year. Imagine if we could get this time back. Then we must learn how to stop doing this. Meet Leah. She's 28 years old, and today we will help her to be more productive. The first thing Leah should do is to listen to her body. Try to work together and take advantage of it. You probably know that some people are early birds and others are night owls. So Leah needs to figure out which one she is. Is she more active in the morning or in the evening? Now that she figured it out, she needs to plan her sleeping schedule properly, accounting for her needs, but also for commitments like office hours. Leah has a lot of freedom here. She lives alone and works remotely. But she does have a meeting every workday at 11, and she watches her niece for an hour after school. So she has to be awake at those times. Happily, she's an early bird. Consistency is very important for the sleeping schedule, so once she figures it out, she needs to stick to it. After weeks of trying different things, Leah realized that she needs 7.5 hours of sleep. So she goes to bed at 11:15 p.m., it takes her about 15 minutes to fall asleep, and she wakes up at 6 a.m. The next thing Leah needs is a constant and energy-boosting morning routine. This way, she won't waste time and energy thinking if she should shower or if she wants to brush her teeth before or after you eat, or if she wants to eat sandwiches or eggs for breakfast. It's nice to add some energy-boosting activities like a workout or a little walk. Also, it's good to avoid your smartphone during the first hour of the day. Morning is done, but there's a whole working day ahead. There are a couple of rules Leah needs to know. First, to-do lists are important. The problem is that our to-do lists are never-ending. Good news! We don't have to do every single thing on that list. Have you ever heard of the 80-20 rule? It states that 20% of our tasks give us 80% of the result. The other 80% of the tasks only give us an additional 20% of the outcome. Bottom line, 80% of our tasks are close to useless. So what Leah needs to do is to look at her to-do list and identify the 20% of the most important tasks and start with them right away. But what should she start with? She should eat a live frog. No, not this kind of frog. The frog is the most important and most likely the most difficult task on the to-do list. It's the task that will have the most positive impact on Leah's career, and it's probably the one she is more likely to procrastinate on. So, she should identify the frog and eat it, meaning do that task right away. Completions of the hardest tasks give us the most satisfaction. But frogs are frogs because they're the hardest and the ones we typically procrastinate on. I'm willing to bet that at least 15 of those 17 hours we lose, we procrastinate on the big and most important task. The reason we procrastinate is that it seems too big, too long, or too scary. So, here's how Leah should approach any hard task. To break it into smaller tasks and then do them one by one. Ideally, each one of these tasks should take no longer than 20 minutes. Leah's most important task for the day is to finish her work project, so that's what she needs to break into parts. But wait, before Leah starts, we need to check the other tasks and try to distribute them throughout the day effectively. Leah should track the time frames when she's most productive and when her brain works best. Pinpoint the opposite, times when she gets exhausted, or times when she normally gets distracted by other commitments in her life. Here's a list of all the typical tasks she does every day, and now she just needs to assign them to the time slots. Leah's most important task every day is to work on her project, so she obviously should avoid doing it at 1 p.m., when her niece comes to stay with her for an hour after school. Leah can get easily distracted, so she should better schedule checking emails during this time slot. The best idea is to schedule the most important task during her most productive hours. Her most productive hours are from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m., so she needs to start with it first thing in the morning and do the hardest tasks during that time. Leah's brain stops working as efficiently around 4 p.m., so that's a good time to do notorious work like editing the variables and putting the tables together. Drafting a day like this will give her a productive structure she can work around. Now it's time to start working. Here are a few tips for Leah on how to do it efficiently. First, group similar tasks so you can do them one after another while staying in the right mindset. Second, eliminate everything distracting. Put the phone on Do Not Disturb mode, use website blockers, and don't check email. In fact, set 2 time slots every day to check emails and never do it when it's not the time. If something comes to your mind, like a thought or another thing you realized you need to do, don't jump to do it. Just write it down and go back to the main task. Always keep a notebook to capture thoughts and ideas, because they don't always come back. Let go of perfectionism. It's unnecessary and only adds stress and pressure. The next truth is that you can't be productive without taking breaks. We're not robots to sit down and work for 9 hours straight without any breaks. That's actually another reason why you procrastinate. There are many strategies, and you should find what works best for you. Some people focus for 25 minutes and take a 5-minute break after. Some do it 50-10. Some work for 90 minutes with a 15-minute break. Try each and see what works best for you. But don't go more than 90 minutes at once without a break. You'll start losing your focus, and it'll be hard to make up for it. Instead of a 15-minute break, you'll need 1 hour or will even procrastinate for the rest of your day. We don't want that. Try to take effective breaks, though. The breaks must give you energy instead of taking it away. Scrolling through social media isn't a good kind of break because it makes your attention scattered. The best one is probably to go outside for a short walk, but you can also make yourself a cup of tea or have a chat with a colleague. If you decide to take a power nap, schedule a 25-minute nap, 5 to fall asleep, and 20 for the actual nap. Don't take a nap longer than that, because you'll enter a sleeping phase that will only make you groggy when you wake up. But also, don't stress about not being able to fall asleep within 5 minutes. As long as you're laying those 25 minutes with your eyes closed, your brain gets that needed rest. Here's a list of nice break activities for you. Go outside. Do a little stretch. Lie down and close your eyes. Make a drink. Eat a healthy snack. Take a call. Breathing exercise or meditation. Tidy up your room. Read a book. Doodle. I like that one. That's it. The working day is over. Remember that the evening routine is important to detach from work and start resting. Take a shower, eat dinner, and read. And don't forget to plan for the next day. This way, you'll be able to start your day right away without losing any time to figure it out. Good luck!